Hi guys, how's it going? It's me, Alexei, Skate Case, and uh, well, today I'm not with Skate Case. I'm with a book. It's called Time Atom, and it's an extremely fascinating book. Um, the reason I like it so much is because it goes into the fractal nature of reality, and it talks about different shifts in consciousness, basically, and how the relative time dilation is associated with it as well. And just to walk you through the book, basically, we design a new physics, and it's based off conscious harmonics and light state harmony. So the very first thing we do is we go through the crystal of time. Let me just show you a close-up on that if I can. Okay, crystal of time. And that shows the moment when the universe collided with time. It explains the expansion of the universe, but also, the most importantly, what it does is that it teaches us that humans can only perceive consciousness when we are accelerating at light speed towards the center of time. Now, I'm not saying we're accelerating at light speed in any given direction, kind of like how we orbit the Earth. We're accelerating towards the center of the Earth at 9.8 meters per second. But what I'm saying is we're orbiting the center of time at an acceleration towards center at the speed of light. Meanwhile, the universe is flying tangential, right? And so what that gives us is a spiral of perception where people have the ability to perceive matter, basically. So then that goes into basically the next section, which is, what is a time atom? Well, a time atom is basically a conscious set. So you can say that a cat would be a time atom, its own particular time atom. They're, a dog, a human. They're all individual sets of consciousness. That's what time atoms are. And so the very first thing we do is we talk about the senseless being, a being with no senses, right? So it's absolutely clueless, doesn't even know it's alive. We call that a time atom 1. And we say it has one orbital. And then we go into a being that has the ability to feel, right? And so we call that a time atom 2. Then we go into the next set, which is a being with the ability to taste and smell. We call that a TA3. And then we go into a being that has the ability to taste, feel, smell, as well as see. And we call that a TA4. And what you see is that each time atom has its own ability of consciousness. Humans fall in the TA5. Theoretical aliens that can travel through time fall in TA6. And interdimensional aliens would fall into TA7. So this is just very general, categorizing time atoms by, say, senses or brain harmonics or conscious states, right? And so then we talk about conscious or time atom packing. So basically the formations that different atoms of consciousness would make. And so you can imagine a TA1 crystal would be similar to a hydrogen crystal. 2 would be beryllium, 3 could be like silicon, 5 potentially looks like that bottom one, human. And then it goes into the different types of bonds that exist between atoms: ionic, covalent, metallic, and then minerals. To give an example, pyrite, 2 sulfurs and 1 iron, could be translated into, with our TA models, to protozoa and starfish. And so then that goes into cluster origins, which talks about grains of crystals of consciousness. And basically each cluster could be like a grain within a crystal, and you could say that each grain has its own consciousness set, almost like a way to perceive reality. And so you can see that there could be different clusters of people, like your neighbors could have this consciousness, you could have that consciousness, and there could be air and earth between you guys. And so you guys will have different views, cultural views, based on the amount of covalent bond sharing, you could say, or universe passing. So then we go into the altered state of consciousness. For example, being hypnotized, sleeping, near-death experiences, waking state. They all have a certain harmonic associated with them, right? The waking state is the beta verse, is what we call it, and that would be the 20 hertz. So it's all harmonic resonance. 20 is the beta. If you divide that by 2, that gives you 10. That puts you in alpha state of a brainwave. You're still awake, but you're a little bit sleepy. Divide that by 2, that gives you 5. 10 divided by 2 is 5. That puts you in the theta wave state, where you're basically asleep. Divide that by 2, that puts you in the delta wave state, right? When you're in the delta wave state, basically you're in the deep sleep, and your hertz is anywhere from 1 to 4 in your brain. So basically, let's go the other direction. So you have 1.4 hertz, or 2.5 hertz, and we multiply that by 2, that gives you 5. You're back in the theta, you're waking up. Multiply that by 2, you get 10, that puts you in alpha, you're awake. Multiply that by 2, that puts you in beta. Now you're ready to go, you're rocking and rolling. Multiply that by 2, that puts you in your slow gamma. So now you've actually, your heightened perception, right? If you multiply that by 2, that puts you in your fast gamma state of mind. And during fast gamma state of mind, which typically only happens when, you could say, dimethyltryptamine or whatever is released into the pineal gland. So near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, you see whatever. Basically what I'm saying is that 80 hertz, your consciousness will leave your body. And so we go into that a little bit in the time atom models. But to go back a step, in the book, The Liquid Light State Universe, basically we took the conscious snapshot and we determined the diameter of consciousness in the now moment, right? So how big is your perception, your sphere of perception? And basically what it is, it's the speed of light times the conscious snapshot, which is 60 times a second. And that gives you 1 times 10 to the 7 meters, right? So now that is your sphere of consciousness. What we then just realized from crystal of time is that in order to perceive matter, the universe needs to be accelerating towards the center of time at the speed of light. Fair enough. And what we see is a harmonic resonance of the delta wave of about 1 to 3 hertz. And so what we did was we figured out the orbital diameter associated with a particle accelerating towards the center of time at the speed of light. That would have a orbital of 2 hertz, right? And so what that actually gave us was the cloud diameter of a delta wave. And interestingly enough, that matched the exact number predicted in the other book, which was 1 times 10 to the 7 meters. And so your consciousness in the delta wave is actually a 1 times 10 to the 7 meter sphere of light that surrounds your center of mass. Based off that, we can create cloud diameters of all the other wavelengths associated with your brain harmonics. That gives us our table of universes, right? So the delta verse is basically brainwave harmonics of 2.5, cloud diameter, 2 times 10 to the 6. Your waking beta state, I call it the beta verse, is a frequency harmonic of 20 hertz in your brain, which is a cloud diameter of 40,000 meters. You can take that all the way into your fast gamma, which would be your out-of-body experience, and now your cloud diameter is 2,500 meters. And so each one of those clouds is basically what you are tuned to based off of your conscious harmonic. Okay, so now we go into the next step, inducing higher frequencies. So, the easiest way would be to use TMS. Let's skip forward. So now we have a more defined time atom model. In the beginning of the book, basically what we did was we created these shells based off the number of senses. What we now realize is that the shells make more sense if they're based off of conscious harmonics, right? So now what you see is the TA5, which represents a human. Now we have orbital states associated with each one of these rings, and each one of those represents a conscious harmonic, okay? And so we can theorize on the conscious harmonics, rather orbitals, of the TA7 being, which would be the next steps, right? Because you could start out at 10, you go 20, 40, 80. So you could say that the next one would be the 160 hertz. After 160 would be, is that right? Yeah, 320 hertz. So let's go back to the magic sphere, right? This is something so here's, you could say, the time atom center of an interdimensional being. Now what I'm saying is, back to the magic sphere, this can represent any object in the liquid light state universe right here. And what we have are these building wave abilities, right, based off light state. And so here you can see one ring would represent the delta, the second one represents the delta and then the theta, and then it would go delta theta, alpha beta, and then delta theta, alpha beta, slow gamma, all the way up. And basically what I'm saying is that it'd be very interesting to see what kind of experience a being would have when their brain harmonic is resonating at 160 hertz as well as 320 hertz. And so that gives us the clouds of universes. So what you can see from this model is that your entire construct of consciousness is being formed by orbiting clouds of universes that accelerate towards your conscious center at the speed of light. And the harmonic state of your brain is what determines which universes that you're actually tuned to. Based on that, you can make cloud technologies, right? And what I'm saying is that these cloud technologies have the ability to push and move back those different universes to where they naturally fall within your beta state of harmonic resonance. In other words, normal dimension shifted to noviverse. Then, what I think is super interesting is relativity is relativity. That gives us, well, just before that, basically what we get at is in a higher frequency, because relativity is relativity, 20 hertz is only 20 hertz for our human understanding, from Earth in our universe, in our place of rotation around time. Relativity is relativity. To another being traveling at a different orbit around time, the 20 hertz would come across as 2.5 hertz. And you could say that the overlap exists between dimensions, where human normal waking state is 20 hertz, but our super heightened state is 80 hertz. When we are at 80 hertz, theoretically, that could be the sleeping state of a being in another dimension. And it's very feasible and reasonable. And so what I'm saying is that a person, with an out-of-body experience could be interacting with beings from another dimension that are sleeping. And so what that gives you now is the difference of time dilations associated with the dimensions. Basically, in our universe, 1 second is 1 second, but for every second that passes in our universe, 3,940 seconds would be happening in the betaverse, which is 1 hour, 1 minute. And so you can do the math there. And what you see though is that you have a layering of conscious types that exist within time itself. And so we live in the universe. When we pass, what this is hinting towards is that we move to the noviverse. And you can actually do some math there to see how old each one of these universes is. And if our universe is 18 billion years old, you could say that the lower verse is only 4.7 million years old. The noviverse would be 69,120 billion years old. So the next dimension in time is actually way older than ours. Let me just put it that way. And so based on this, what you can do is build an interdimensional telescope, okay? And what that does is, it shifts the space and time in order to make the gamma-verse fall within our beta-verse of conscious state of perception. Okay, and so based off of understanding of how the portals work, or how you could say interdimensional consciousness travel works, well, we can find natural portals to other dimensions, right? And so what we notice is that those portals, those types of constructs exist at magnetic hotspots on the Earth, right? And so then it's well, can we maximize nature's flow, essentially? And so here on Earth, we use rivers and wind to create electricity. Can't we harness the magnetic vortex? And what it appears to be is that there's ancient megalithic sites at each one of these magnetic vortexes, and that each one of those electromagnetic orientations actually mimics the interdimensional telescope that's designed earlier in the book. And so what you see is that there's natural interdimensional telescopes that exist all over Earth. Another interesting thing is the tunnel of light, which is the next section, that's covered. And basically, when people pass or they have near-death experiences, they talk about the tunnel of light. And well, when I talk about the description of what an interdimensional telescope would look like, well, it basically resembles the tunnel of light. And so the conclusion, you could say, not conclusion, but a point that comes from all this is that your light state harmony determines your conscious experience. Let me rephrase. Light state harmony at the moment of conscious shift determines your conscious experience during that next harmonic, right? So like say you're sad and you go to sleep, well, you're going to have sad dreams. You're happy and you go to sleep, you're going to have happy dreams. It's a conscious shift, and that's your light state harmony. And so, based on this, when you go into the 80 gamma state, if your light state harmony is a little out of whack, you're going to have a bad experience. If it's in harmony, you're going to have a good experience. And so just to relate this to the Noviverse experience that we all go through at the end, you could say perhaps that's what we call karma. And at the end of the day, I'm just a backyard observer, understanding, trying to understand reality here. And you can see that there's a lot more going on with senses, consciousness, and interdimensions. And from this model, we see that true progress comes when we understand the process of spirit or light state harmony and conscious shifts. So, thanks for reading, and I hope you have a wonderful trip through reality. That is Time Atom in a nutshell. Boom. I hope you enjoyed that little explanation of Time Atom. And yeah, maybe I'll see you guys at the market tomorrow. See ya.